Welcome back to hour number 2 of the Gary Sutton Show on WSBA Radio. I had a chance last night I was invited to the Republican dinner last night. I very seldom ever go to these things. I would go to a Democratic dinner if they would invite me there, too. Just to let you know, I'm an equal opportunity guy going to dinner. But interesting time last night. Governor Corbett was there. I also heard Scott Perry speak, and also Senator Mike Waugh. Not Senator Mike Waugh, who has died, by the way. And again, our thoughts about Mike Waugh out there. But the senator who is now the senator of the 28th District, Senator Scott Wagner, who was there last night, had some interesting things to say. And I asked Scott if he'd be with us here this morning on the Gary Sutton Show, and he joins us here on WSBA. Scott, good to have you on.
Gary, good morning. How are you?
Good. It was good to see you last night. And we were talking a little bit about you this morning, in front of your back, by the way, regarding your vote last week that got on the floor of the Senate and really laid out the idea of paycheck protection, at least got a preliminary look at it here and where people stand. And we found out that a number of Republicans from down in the Philadelphia area, for example, voted against your particular paycheck protection effort out there. Tell us a little bit about that from your perspective.
Well, Gary, for the listeners out there that sometimes are a little confused about paycheck protection, what it is, every public sector employee in the state of Pennsylvania, we'll talk about the school teachers. Every teacher that is in Pennsylvania, whether they get paid one time a week or every 2 weeks,
right,
when their paycheck is paid, there's a deduction taken out for PSEA union dues. And what paycheck protection would do is paycheck protection would give those employees a choice as to whether they want to pay dues or not. And that's really what paycheck protection is all about. Now, specifically the PSEA. The PSEA has almost, I think it's over 186,000 members, and they get dues from those members, like I said, either weekly or biweekly. And this year, the PSEA will collect probably 110 to 120 million in dues, and they will use probably somewhere between 30 and 40 million of that of those dues collected. For political purposes, whether it's a contribution to House and Senate members, lobbying, and there's a lot of money spent on lobbying, advertisements, mailing, TV ads, all that kind of stuff. And the bottom line is, listen, if the unions, I have nothing against unions.
Sure.
I think unions have a place. But at the end of the day, if the members, it's about choice. And there are a percentage of teachers, for example, that are Republicans, they're Second Amendment, they're NRA members,
right,
pro-life, pro-choice, whatever they are. They don't agree with the political positions of the PSEA, but their money is being deducted. And now the PSEA will say, well, there's a fair shares portion, and then there's the PAC portion. Well, I have in my office, I have examples of political mailings that are going out that are being used. The fair shares portion of the dues being taken out is being used for political purposes. So let's give everybody a choice. And if the unions are creating such great value for their members, well then just let them send a bill and let the members send a check in, or use a credit card or get on to auto debit, whatever. But we shouldn't be using taxpayer resources to collect those dues. And honestly,
yeah,
the money, that 30 to 40 million, and maybe even more that I was talking about, is part of the corruption of the system at Harrisburg. So if we're going to get rid of the corruption, this is the when you're eating an elephant, you eat a bite at a time. This is the first bite of the elephant, and it's the most significant bite. I was talking about Brett just before you, and he was talking about this very subject, and one of the things that I said was the idea that here we are, teachers. We act as though 100% of the teachers think a certain way when we put that kind of money out on politics, when in reality, and I saw a recent survey that said it's about a 60-40 split around the country on Democrats versus Republicans. So if it's a 60-40 split and 40% are voting Republican causes and Republican candidates and 60% are voting Democratic causes and Democratic candidates, seems to me that money ought to be a 60-40 split if you're really trying to be fair about that. Now, again, take that away and say, negotiate with your members about value, about what you're providing them, and you have a much better situation all around. But the unions see this as you're union busting right now, or people like you are union busting out there by doing this. And, of course, you can't even get your own Republicans down in the Philadelphia area to even join on this right now. I know you mentioned that last night in your speech about the idea that was very, very revealing to you about who kind of stood up and was counted on this. Well, Gary, it wasn't revealing to me. what this did, we were able to, number one, if I would have Senator Eichelberger from Altoona has a paycheck protection bill in the Senate that deals specifically with paycheck protection. That bill was not going to move. So what we were able to do, we found a school code bill, and we introduced an amendment, and we attached that to that school code bill. Now, that amendment had to go to the floor, the Senate floor, and it had to be voted on an up or down vote. I knew, and not a surprise to me at all, and not a surprise to other people, but 6 Republicans from the Southeast voted no for the Paycheck Protection Amendment. Now, we knew that, but most importantly, Gary, is now the world knows the 20 senators, the 20 Senate Republicans who voted yes, and now the world knows the 6 Republicans who voted no. And that's significant. So there are, and how this is going to change, it's almost like I described it in one of my emails. It's like a pile of poker chips. You know, we currently have 23 Democrat poker chips over here. Let's say that they're white chips, okay? And then you have 27 blue Republican chips, okay? But when that paycheck protection vote came down, we had to take 6 of those votes away and slide them over to the Democrat side. So what's going to happen? This is a poker game, and I'm optimistic that we are going to pick up probably 2 to 3 new Republican seats in the election that's coming up in 2 weeks, and other Senate seats around the state. So that will move the Republican majority from 27 to possibly 29 or 30, and then drop the Democrats down to either 20 or 21. And it changes the dynamics. But I think that Paycheck Protection Amendment that came to the floor, it now tells the world, who voted no and who voted yes. And that's a big deal in itself because, that's voters demand, they want to know where their Senate or House member is, and everybody's been playing the games. Well, we don't have enough votes, we can't get to the floor. Hey, I think getting it to the floor was a huge victory, and now we're gonna chip away, and I think paycheck protection will happen it could happen next year, it could be the following year, and whatever. But and people are saying, well, what happens if Governor Corbett's not successful? We have Governor Wolf. Well, you know what? I'm going to still push for paycheck protection because Governor Wolf is going to want things. If he has this great big grand agenda, he's going to want to do this and do that and raise taxes. He's going to listen. I'm going to tell you something. I'm going to be at the table, and I want to see. We're going to get something if he wants something, and that's the way the world works. It's negotiation. But and we talked about our Senate leadership is from the Southeast. And so I think by having a shift in Senate leadership and picking up some more Republican seats, we're on our way to accomplishing some things.
Scott, the one thing I guess that would bother me a little bit, and I want to throw it to you and see what you think. I think the point you made, you have to negotiate, you want to compromise and so forth. But the key here, and we've seen it so many times on the federal level, we've even seen it on the state level, is we don't want to compromise away our principles. And for a lot of people, this whole election, be it the gubernatorial part of it, be it the state senator or state legislative part of it, or even the congressional part of it, is about how much more of my money are you going to plunder to take out there and spend in our name when maybe we could spend it in our name a little bit better if we were able to keep it in our pockets. And so when we negotiate and we get something for us, at the same time, we want to make sure when we get something for us, we're not violating principles along the way. Your thoughts about that?
Well, listen, if Tom Wolf is such a sharp business person, he said he had to step into his business to save his business because of the economy. He had to make some. So I would assume, and again, sometimes when you assume, what happens.
I understand that. Yes.
But at the end of the day, he had to make some tough decisions. Listen, I've been in Harrisburg for 7 months. We don't have a revenue problem. We have a spending problem. Pure spending problem. Listen, he wants more money for teachers. Okay, well, here's a good way you could get more money for teachers. How about if you eliminated the prevailing wage mandate on school districts on all their projects, whether it's new buildings or roof replacement or boiler replacement? I did a real quick calculation. I think by eliminating the prevailing wage mandate on schools, throughout the state of Pennsylvania would save $1 billion. Well, there's the $1 billion that he's running around saying that Governor Corbett cut from the budget, which was the school district budgets, which he didn't do, which is not true.
Right.
But at the end of the day,
the whole time,
listen, let the competitive market work. We have again, if you understand on the prevailing wage mandates, and some listeners maybe don't totally understand it, it's a set labor rate that contractor has to use when they're on a school district,
which is a lot higher than if you have the private rate coming in there and bidding and trying to get in the game there, right?
Well, listen, we have a real live example right here in York County. Southwestern School District, about 1.5 2 years ago, did some roof work on, I guess, either one or a couple of their schools. They went out, they got a price from the contractor. The contractor came in and gave a price of $84,000. Well, the contractor didn't price the job with prevailing wage rates, so he had to go back and reprice his bid with prevailing wage rates. It came in at $126,000.
Wow.
Now, this contractor was the same contractor was willing to do it for $84,000, but meanwhile, because of a government mandate, he had to pay prevailing wage rates. It cost the school district $42,000 more. Now everybody's complaining about teachers. I think $42,000 would pay an entry-level teacher.
Sure would.
So, come on. Everybody is. The problem, Gary, is everybody is so territorial. Nobody wants they don't want their little kingdom. They don't want their little kingdom disrupted. And I can tell you something that we have some tough decisions to make. And in Harrisburg, I'm not going to Harrisburg. I'm not compromising my principles. Number one, I can come back. I can drive south every night and know that I did the right thing. And I'm still a garbage guy. I'm in the waste business. I'm not going to Harrisburg. I'm not a status quo guy. You've read a lot about me in the last 6 months. Listen. Nasty letters to the editor. I'm a bad guy. This and that. There's TV news reports. I'm on the internet. Listen, the voters, they voted. If everybody's happy with status quo, then you know what? Then I'm not the right guy.
Well, then I don't know how much you've heard our show, but I said I'm in favor of a little chaos. I like chaos in politics, and I mean positive chaos where people are not accepting status quo. And I think a lot of people out here are feeling the same way, whether it's you or other people like you who are going out there and standing up and saying, wait a second, the way this is working is not good enough. We're not getting the product that we're supposed to be getting. We're not getting the service we're supposed to be getting. So let's change it and mix it up and shake it up a little bit. So I think a little chaos every now and then. What was that thing about refreshing the tree of liberty every now and then? Well, I think a little chaos might do that for us.
Well, it's called disruption. And you know what? If there's a business, if you're a turnaround guy or a CEO and you have a business that is losing a lot of money and it's serious financial trouble, you go in and you quickly assess what needs to be changed, and you sure as heck don't stick to the phase, well, we've always done it this way, and you let everything go because it'll never happen. There needs to be some disruption. But Listen, I will tell you that, I put a coat and tie on when I go to Harrisburg. I will engage in disruption with professionalism and style and class.
And I want to talk a little bit more about that when we come back, too. And some of you mentioned something last night that was really interesting to me, and it's one of the reasons I wanted to talk to you this morning about some of the things that surprised you in Harrisburg. And one of the things was a lack of collegiality or a lack of knowing about each other, the people that you're dealing with there. We're taking people inside where the Senate works right now and where the State Assembly works. And I want to ask you that question when we come back, Scott. Scott Wagner is the senator of the 28th Senatorial District. He'll be right back with us here on the Gary Sutton Show on News Radio 910 WSBA. Welcome back to the Gary Sutton Show on WSBA with Senator Scott Wagner for the 28th Senatorial District here in the state of Pennsylvania and right here in York County. And, Scott, one of the things you said last night, and it really kind of hit me, is, we all assume that the people who vote together and even vote against each other and talk about the issues in Harrisburg get to know each other a little bit. And, you said something last night. Business relationships are very, very important. You're a guy that's a business guy. And you come into this situation and you assume that, government's going to operate a little bit like business and that there's relationships, other people. But you said that's not the case in Harrisburg. Tell us a little bit about that.
Well, Gary, what I found is they're just people, the senators don't know each other. And one within the first month, I was up in Harrisburg. I invited all the Republican senators from the Republican caucus to go out for dinner one night, and I said, "Here are the rules: no staff, no lobbyists, no coats and ties. Here's where we're going to go." And 10 of the Republican senators, took me up on my invite, and we had a really nice dinner. I learned that, where some of the senators, where their kids go to school, go to college. You just learn things about, are your parents still living? No, my parents have passed, or I have a father and he's got this kind of issue. And it's like last night, at the event, I met your mother, and there's nothing that I don't have a motive here, but
right.
Gary, probably when I'll see you, if I see you next, I'm going to say, Gary, how's your mother doing?
Right.
You're going to say, oh, she's doing great, or she's had this going on or this going on, and you learn about people, and I think that I've had dinner. Hard to believe. Maybe some people wouldn't believe this, but I had something that I wanted to talk to a Democrat senator about. So I went to Philadelphia and I had dinner with him one evening, and I learned that his father's going through some health issues, and actually his father's got a pretty amazing story, and it's natural to me, like, to ask him, so how's your father doing? And his father's not doing well health wise, but you want to learn about what's happening in people's area, and it's called breaking bread and getting to know the other people, and when you do that, you find out you have a lot of commonalities.
Well, you're restoring one of the things here, Scott. Just the thought came to mind. You're restoring some honor, the idea that there is honor among people, and so when you talk about. You talked about compromise before this last segment. Now you can compromise and sit down with people as people instead of this polarized thing we've gotten to in this country that seems like I got to take this side and I'm taking this side, instead of saying, well, I kind of know where you came from and let's talk a little bit about some common ground here.
Absolutely. And I'll give you an example. There's Senator Dave Argyle from up in Schuylkill County.
Okay.
And so I had dinner with Dave one night. And Dave had just come back from a trip. He was over in Normandy. He's a huge history buff.
Oh, yeah.
So, I learned about that. And, I'll never forget, I don't know how many years ago it was, I just can't remember, but it was probably 10, 12 years ago. I had a conversation with Congressman Platts. And somehow we started talking about that the person he was trying to resolve an issue with was a huge Civil War buff. Well, Congressman Platts talked to this person, and it turns out, obviously, at that time, and I'll call him Todd. Todd represented Gettysburg, where the Civil War took place, and so there was commonality, and I think probably Todd was able to resolve this issue, but because he had some commonality, and they built. Maybe they didn't meet, but they built a relationship over the phone. But at the end of the day, that's what we're missing. And, I was in Washington about 5 years ago, and I was in a very small group of people, and we had an opportunity to spend an hour and a half with Supreme Court Justice Sandra Day O'Connor.
Wow.
And interesting thing, when I think there were 20 of us in a room. She had a chair in the front of the room. It was like sitting there talking to your grandmother. It was fascinating for an hour and a half. She's from Arizona. She served in the state Senate, and then she came to Washington, and she served in the Senate or House of Representatives. I'd have to go back and look. But what she said was very interesting. She said the culture's changed in Washington. It's like when we get together, I'd invite the other legislators over to my house, and we'd make tacos and drink beer and talk about this issue in my backyard. And that's all. I think people have gotten involved in their busy lives, and that's all going away. But I just think it's important that you build relationships, and I don't see that in Harrisburg, and that's really unfortunate.
Well, and I think the other thing too is that, Scott, in a way, it kind of brings you back to being a person again instead of being you mentioned this last night, instead of being a senator or a state rep, and you get back to the idea of, okay, we're talking about this as people. Oh yeah, by the way, we represent people, so it's nice to get back on solid ground here to talk about things that really make sense to people and citizens around the state.
Absolutely, and I think that's we've lost that, and it's unfortunate. And listen, I talked to a lot of people, and I've had I happened to be at a barbershop this morning, and there were two gentlemen in there. One used to work for, I believe, Harley Davidson. Another one was worked for the operating engineers, and I can't vote for you, and because of you don't like unions. And so, you know what? After 15 minutes of conversation, I think we learned a little bit about each other, the three of us.
Right.
And listen, it's what it's all about. And at the end of the day, I told him, I said, listen, I appreciate the conversation, but I'll just leave you with this. You live in the 28th Senate District, and I'm going to represent you whether you're a Democrat, Independent, or Republican.
Right.
Because at the end of the day, listen, we're all on the same ship, and it's called the Titanic. And so,
yeah.
I don't when a constituent call comes into my district office, we're in Harrisburg, I don't say are they a Democrat or Republican. Listen, at the end of the day, we're all in this together. At the end of the day, we're all Americans. But I think what I learned is a very important thing, Gary. Everybody has a story, and you got to learn their story.
Yeah, that's a great point. I really laud you for saying that last night and today here. I think it really gives us another perspective because we often don't think about that particular side of it, Scott. Hey, thanks so much for taking time to be with us this morning here on short notice. I really do appreciate it.
All right, and make sure you say hi to your mother today.
I will do that. I say hi to her just about every day, but it was nice having her meet you last night. Thanks so much, Scott.
See you, Gary.
Take care. Bye. Scott Wagner, Senator here in the state of Pennsylvania for the 28th District. With some interesting insights this morning. We never talk much about how people get along in our state assemblies. Well, you got a little insight this morning about maybe some good ideas about maybe how they can do better.